Alrighty, we're going to start this video off by implementing our ability to log in. So the first step is I'm going to jump down to stores and user. And I think okay, so details is a new behavior subject. The first thing I'm going to do is hook details up to our dispatcher. So I'm going to say dispatcher.onMoney a user details set. How do I want to format that? We'll do it like that. Map action goes into action.details, so we're just going to grab the details out of the action. And then I'm going to say start with default details, and then I'm going to say dot publish replay 1. Then, what are you doing? Then I'm going to say this details connect, because it is a connectable observable. I talk all about connectable observables and hot and cold observables in my React.js course. Then what I'm going to do is implement the login. My login is actually very straightforward because I'm simply, instead of saying this details next is logged in as true, and instead of doing the succeed, I'm simply going to say socket, which I'm going to import socket here in a moment. I'm going to say socket.emit action, or whoops, action. And then let's come up here and let's import socket. And that's it. Anytime you want to send an action to the server, you just emit the action on socket.io. And this actually completes our user store. Now we're properly subscribed to the details, and we're properly submitting our action, our login action. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and implement logging in on the server side. So I'm going to jump over into server model client, and I'm going to start off by importing our validation. So I'm going to say import validate name from back shared validation user. Then I'm going to go ahead and write a login function. So I'm going to scroll down. Let's just do this right here. How about let's do it underneath emit. I'm going to say login name. I'm going to say const validator equals validate name. If validator did fail, then return the validator. Otherwise set is logged in to true. Set our name to name, and then set our details. So this dot emit a user details set this dot details. Then I'm going to do something. Actually, no, I won't worry about that right now. There's a couple more lines of code that I want to put in this method, but we won't deal with that yet. Now, inside of install handlers, what I want to do is I want to handle the login. So I'm simply going to say this.onRequest, and I'm going to pass in an object that will have an a user login action. And for this, I'm simply going to say const validator equals this login action.name, followed by this respond with action validator. So a couple interesting things to note. In order to handle the request, because we have this on-socket action, we emit it to ourselves. Remember, we are a dispatcher. We simply do this on request, and then we can handle those events. Then we can also use methods such as respond. If you recall, respond is a function that will check a validator, see if it failed. If it did pass a failed action, if it didn't pass a succeed or success action. And I think that should be enough for us to come over here and reload and hit login, and then try to log in. And you'll notice, so we did the login with our name, then we got our user details set again, then our dialog went away, and then user login was successful. It was green. And now we're successfully logged in. And that's really all there is to it. Generally, most of our operations are going to be a matter of going into the store, saying dispatcher on request whatever, and then delegating those actions to the socket. Then on the server side, we simply add a handler, such as on request. All right, but what about actions such as that are specific to what room you're in, such as actions that are specific to the game or specific to the lobby? We could definitely write all those handlers inside of the install handlers function. But to make things a little bit more object-oriented, I'm going to introduce the concept of a handler. So what I'm going to do is in lib, I'm going to create a new file called handlers.js. And he's going to export a class called handlerBase. He's going to have a constructor that takes in a client. So this client equals client. And then he's going to have a onDisposes function. Then I'm going to have a empty function called onLogin, which the client will notify the handler base when the user becomes logged in successfully. Then I'm going to write a dispose function on our handler base, which will say for let on dispose of this, or again I can do this on dispose for each d goes into invoke d, and then this on disposes equals empty array. And then I'm going to have a function called onDispose, which will take in a list of callbacks, which will simply push them onto our onDispose array. So push those on. And there we go. That's our handler base. And the cool thing about the handler base is when you join a game, you'll get a new game handler instantiated. But when you leave that game, that handler will then clean itself up by invoking all of its onDisposes. So now before we write our first handler, let's hook in the concept of handlers into our client. So let's go back to our client, and then at the top, I'm going to say this dot handlers equals null. Then on dispose, I'm going to say if we have a handler currently active, then say this dot handlers dot dispose. And probably also say this handlers equals null. Then we're going to have a function called setHandlers, which will take in a new handlers. And what he's going to do is he's going to say if this handlers, then this handlers dispose. At the moment, I wrote this in such a way where you can only be in the login or in the lobby or in a game, but not both at the same time. So that's just to make things a little bit easier. There's nothing stopping you from changing this architecture up a little bit to allow you to be in multiple games simultaneously. But I'm making it so whenever we set the handlers to a new thing, our old handlers gets disposed. Now all we have to do left on this is simply say this handlers equals this handlers. And then we're done. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is... I have actually one more thing that I need to do with this. And that is on login, I need to notify our handlers that we logged in, if we do have one. So after we emit user details set, I'm going to say if this dot handlers, then invoke this dot handlers dot on login. And then we're done. So now let's go ahead and stub out our handlers classes. So I'm going to create a new folder called handlers. Inside of this, I'm going to create a new file called lobby.js. And the lobby handlers will be responsible for handling all the actions that come from the lobby. So I'm going to say import star as a from back actions. Then import handler base from back lib handler. And I'm also going to import, just preemptively, validate message from back shared validation. And what did I call that? I think I just chat. Yeah, it's just chat. Then I'm going to export default class lobby handlers extends handler base. And he's going to have a constructor of client. And he's also going to receive a reference to the lobby, which we haven't created yet. And he's simply going to say super client. Then the way that he's going to... so the lobby is going to be a room. So when the lobby handlers is created, I want to add ourselves to the lobby room, but I also want to keep track of the unregister method that will be returned by add client and have that pushed onto our onDisposes so that when our lobby handlers gets disposed, our subscription to the lobby room also goes with it. So I'm going to say this dot onDispose, and there we go. It's actually handler base from lib handlers. This onDispose, I'm going to say lobby.addClient. Then I'm also going to put in client.onRequest a lobby send message action goes into. And for this, I'm simply going to say const validator equals validate message, action.message. If the validator did fail, then client fail our action with our validator.message, and then return. Otherwise, do lobby.send message this client action message. I know we don't have the send message method written yet, but we will here soon. So as you see, I'm invoking this on disposed, and I'm passing in a list of the subscriptions that I want to have disposed when the lobby handlers becomes disposed. So this is how I'm going to be handling our stuff, our messages. Now let's go ahead and do our game. So I'm going to come up here to handlers, create a new file called game.js. And we're going to import these same three things. And let's see, what else do we want to import? I think that's about it. So I'm going to say export default class game handlers from, or sorry, not from, extends handler base. And then we'll have a constructor of client and game. We'll do a super client. We'll do a this.game equals game. And then we're done for now. So the game handlers is where we're going to actually go in and handle all the messages, such as setting the options, starting the game, and so on. So yeah, now what we can do is we can hop back into the client and we can actually instantiate our lobby handlers, which we don't have a lobby instantiated yet. We don't. Actually, let's do that first. Let's create the lobby class. Why not? Lobby class is going to be pretty straightforward. So in model, I'm going to create a file called lobby.js. We're going to import Lodash. We're going to import our actions. Or what am I thinking? Back actions. We're going to import our room base from back lib room. Then I'm going to export class lobby extends room base. And he's going to have a view. His view is simply going to be messages and games. I'm going to say messages is going to equal this messages.slice. And games is going to be this.games.map. Game goes into a new object with the ID of game.id, a title of game.title, and a players of game.players.map. P goes into p.name. So this is the information we're going to submit to the clients from our lobby. Now you might be wondering why I'm doing this.messages.slice for the messages, and the reason is I need to make a copy of that array. If the array does not get copied, our diff function is going to get confused. So the objects that we return from our views have to be copies or immutable objects, one or the other. So then let's go ahead and create our constructor. He's going to take an app. The first thing we're going to do in the CTOR is super, and we're going to super a view lobby. Then we say this.clients. Actually, we don't need to do this.clients equals because room base does indeed have a clients array already. This.messages equals array. This.games equals array. This app equals app. And I guess why not go ahead and preemptively do this next game ID equals 1. Then I might as well just implement the rest of this with the exception of being able to... Actually, I'm just going to implement send message. I'm going to say send message, client message. I'm going to say if not, client is logged in, throw a new error, client must be logged in. Then I'm going to say simply this tick. And inside of the tick, I'm going to say this messages push, and I'm going to push in a new message. The index is going to be this messages length plus 1. The name is going to be the name of the client, the logged in client, and the message is simply going to be the message. And so by doing this tick, then it will, after the tick, it'll get a diff of the view and then submit the diff to all the different clients that a new message has came in. So now what we can do is we're only going to have ever one lobby instantiated. And we're going to do that in application. So take one last look at what we have here in this class. Now let's jump into application, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import lobby from lobby. Then I'm simply going to say this lobby equals new lobby this. And that finishes the application room. All it needs to do is keep track of our card database, our lobby, and have a view that returns the sets. And that's it. So now we can jump into Client.js, and we can start messing around with the lobby. So I'm going to scroll down to our install handlers, and up at top, I'm going to say const lobby equals this app. Then underneath user login, I'm going to say a.lobby join action goes into. Now I'm going to do something interesting here. When we try to join the lobby, we're going to want to instantiate our lobby handlers. And but if we're already in a lobby, we don't want to do that. So the first step is obviously going to be jumping back all the way to the top and importing our lobby handlers from handlers lobby, and then import our game handlers from handlers game. So we got to make sure we have both of those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and on lobby join, I'm simply going to say if this dot handlers instance of lobby handlers, then this dot succeed action and return. So this dot succeed action, of course, will do this dot emit, and then the emit, of course, is being overridden by our subclass, and that'll be sent to the client. Then I'm going to say this set handlers, new lobby handlers, passing in this and passing in lobby, and then followed by a this succeed action. And there you go. So now, should be able to come over here and refresh. And let's go ahead and full screen that. Now I should be able to log in, and I can. And now let's watch what happens when I send a message. Well, as you'll notice, I am not getting a... Doesn't seem like I was logged into the lobby. Oh, of course, I wasn't logged into the lobby because on my client side, in my lobby.js file, I have it sent. I'm not sending it to the socket. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's pull down the socket, and then for our lobby join, or let's do our view first. For our view, our default view is going to have empty arrays for both messages and games, and then of course I'm going to import create view money from lib stores. Or is it stores or stores? It's store. So with that, I now should be able to say this view equals create view, passing in our dispatcher, and a view lobby, passing in our default view of default view. Then on request, on lobby join, instead of just eating that action and making it succeed, we're going to say socket.emit action action. And then inside of our to-do send to socket, we're on our send message, I'm simply going to say socket emit action action. And that should complete our lobby. So with that, I should be able to come over here and refresh. And I should get a merge view on lobby, and I do, with an empty games and an empty messages. I should be able to log in. Now for the moment of truth, we can see the chat works. So when I type in a chat message, we send a lobby send message request. We don't get a success response because I don't really care about doing that in this particular instance for sending chat messages. But we do get a merge view that will contain a diff with the messages array with the splice. So the splice simply saying we're going to add a new message to the messages array. And so if I duplicate this tab, we see that the messages appear there as well. And if I were to log in and send messages, they appear on both screens. So yeah, let's go ahead and take one last look at the lobby store. Just going to scroll down here. And so, as you can see, because of the way the architecture is set up, hooking this up into Socket.io is just trivial. And with that, I guess we'll see you guys in the next video.